This is Dale Wetzel. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. And if you're out cruising around right now, you might consider dropping in. There's a few tables open, and the place is filling up, though. So you'd better hustle, because it's a great place to eat and have a drink. It's got a wonderful historic atmosphere, and the folks that cook your steak really know what they're doing, because they recently got a national award from the Cattlemen's Association. We're going to get right into our subject for the next half hour.
You forgot about the specials.
I didn't forget about them. I just didn't mention them.
Go
ahead and mention them if you'd like.
I thought after the first half hour maybe you wanted one of those half-price bottles of wine.
I wanted a half-price bottle of scotch.
It's Wine Down Wednesday at the Peacock Alley. So that means when you come down on Wednesdays, you get a half-price bottle of wine. Does that sound good to everyone? So
it sounds like I need 2 for 1.
Yeah,
which is basically what we're talking about here.
I was also going to tell you that
if I was a wine drinker.
You were talking about the history of the Peacock Alley. Did you know the Bank of North Dakota and the state-owned mill are actually ideas that were born at the Peacock Alley?
I'm sure that they were not only born, but they were probably raised to middle school age by the time things got going. And as a matter of fact, we have one of the directors of the State Mill and Elevator in the Bank of North Dakota right here with us. He's the Agriculture Commissioner, Mr. Doug Goring. We also have with us Mr. Troy Coons, who's the Vice President of the Northwest Landowners Association, which is an organization that's been monitoring landowner and oil company relations and suggesting ways to improve them. We also have with us Senator Rich Wardner, who is the Republican Senate Majority Leader from Dickinson, also a former member of the House and a former teacher and football coach and Chamber of Commerce man and just a general bon vivant. And we're going to be discussing this evening mediation of landowner oil company disputes, which is something that the legislature recently enacted, and that's part of Mr. Doug Goring's department in the Department of Agriculture. And we're also going to be talking about a proposal to reclaim pipelines that are no longer used in a way that can be financed and done. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Coons, could you just talk about specifically the mediation program? What is it that you look for the mediation program to do? How do you look for it to be helpful to landowners?
It gives the landowners an alternative to come to a resolution without having to go to an attorney and the expense of that. With the mediation, you'll go in, you'll split the cost of the mediation with the other party, so it's a lot more cost effective. And the mediation services have had a 80+% success rate, so it's very well liked.
What sort of questions get mediated? What sort of things get brought to a mediator?
You'll have things from sites to almost anything that's involved with the activity out there. There's just the whole range of it. First of all, could you just tell us a bit about the Northwest Landowners Association, how you came to be and what your purpose is? We started back informally about 6 years ago, formally here 2.5 years ago. Myself and Bob Grant from Berthold, North Dakota, founded the group. We have 13 board members now, 4 from different regions, 1 at large, ranging from the Botno area to out in the Tioga area up to the Lignite-Crosby area. But we work with any issues from Fargo to Williston. You know, it's not just oil, it's anything that relates to property owners. We're looking for just fair, equitable treatment for issues that pop up and work as a team on development in the state.
How many members do you have, sir?
400, a little less than 400, bounces right around that area.
And if I'm listening to this and I want to join your organization, what would I do?
You can go to northwestlandownersassociation.com, nwlandowners.com.
And if you Google the term Northwest Landowners, North Dakota, you could probably find yourself, right?
It will pop up right away.
They do have a rather excellent website, I must say. I've checked it out myself. Agriculture Commissioner Doug Goring, your agency handles these mediation difficulties. Can you just tell us how the process works and what your knowledge is of it and your experience with it?
Well, it's been working well, and I got to tell you, about 3 years ago, dealing with so many different issues that had come up out there in the ag community, dealing with companies mostly involved in gas and oil development, had a lot of concerns. And I approached the Petroleum Council with this issue and some of their members, and we talked about siting issues. We talked about how some producers, landowners felt that they weren't being compensated enough for damages. And through some really good discussions with Ron Ness, we came up with this idea, and I'll credit Ron with it. He said, I think you guys would be really fair. Why not take your mediation program and help to resolve some of these conflicts? So that kind of was the birthing point, and went to the last legislative session. The legislature expanded the scope of the program so that we could include landowners instead of just farmers. And we took that program to a new level where we deal with easements, we deal with damages, survey work, drilling locations. We look at mineral disputes, surface owner issues. It's been a great way to get in the middle of something and start to help them develop some dialogue, understand from both sides what some of the concerns are, what some of the issues are, because let's face it, probably both needed to have a better appreciation for what both of them had. We have a resource out there that needs to be developed in a very responsible manner, and there needs to be respect. Respect for the landowner, respect for the surface owner that doesn't even hold minerals. With easements, I know one of the other issues that had come up was, and I know that was part of what we had talked about early on, but reclamation. We have situations where pipelines were put in and maybe somebody didn't come back and reclaim it properly. Some trenches were left open. Livestock had a potential hazard there. Farming equipment was sometimes put in a very precarious situation. I visited with some of the pipeline companies, contractors, and said, this really comes down to respecting that landowner and their property. And if we do that, we're going to get off to a really good start with eliminating a lot of problems. But where we don't have that opportunity, where something took place early on, we serve as a way to get them at the table, go through a process of identifying first what are the issues, helping both understand what the goal is, and then seeing if we can get there. And it's one way to get beyond litigation. People don't need to spend a lot of money litigating these issues when it's just a matter of really gaining a better understanding and appreciation where both are at. Because on the other side of this, you have the mineral owner that has a constitutional right in this state to develop those minerals. On the Industrial Commission, our responsibility is to make sure that the correlative rights are protected and that there's no waste involved. So looking at those two things, sometimes you could have a situation where maybe the landowner is being exploited. And I say maybe. In other cases, and I've come across these too, where there's maybe an unrealistic expectation and request from a landowner. So then it's a matter of let's find common ground here. Let's, again, have a better understanding, and we get to a better place.
How many of these mediation cases have you gotten in the last year?
Well, just in the last 18 months, and my data actually stopped just around Christmas time because we're gearing up for the legislative session. But we had about 24 cases at that time. Now, recognizing that the last legislative session was 2 years ago, the law went into effect August 1st. We started operating. We really didn't have a whole lot, so most of our work took place probably at the end of 2011, going through 2012. But the activity started ramping up. It started increasing. People started finding out about it. Energy companies thought that we were going to be unfair and be biased. We had agriculture producers and landowners that thought, maybe this isn't such a good process because maybe we're still going to get beat up. But the reality is both seem to find that they liked it very well because it was very fair. It's unbiased. The process goes in place. It doesn't hardly cost you anything. And in fact, in situations where we have one of the parties, and generally we try to negotiate that side of it, who's going to pay the bill. Sometimes it's shared, sometimes it's not because somebody doesn't have the wherewithal or the ability to pay. That goes to the credit review board, and they make a decision as to what the bill's going to be for the party that doesn't really have the means. So it is a nice way to get people at the table. And the other thing it actually does is set precedent. Once you realize that a certain scenario and situation and dispute has been resolved, it kind of establishes what the standard's going to be. Companies won't come back and challenge it, and most of the time you will have landowners understand what is fair, and if they don't feel they're being treated to that degree, they will utilize this, or they'll say, you know, we heard about this and we know this is probably a fair way to deal with it. We have two different processes, formal and informal, and it works very well. Most of the time we're trying to do this in an informal fashion and manner so that people just feel like they can speak freely. We don't deny attorneys the ability to show up at the table, but we tell them, you know, you can come and listen, but this is really between the two disputing parties.
Mr. Coons, have any of your membership had experience with the mediation program, and what was that experience? And also, how well do you believe the mediation program, its availability is known to folks?
We've had several of our membership that have used it. They've been very satisfied. Their comments have been that they will definitely go back in the future. Everything's been very positive. There needs to be more notification out there. There's a lot of people that don't know this yet. And we're working on that. But yeah, there's a lot of people that don't know that yet. But very, very positive results.
Senator Wardner, how has this, do you have any sense for how well this program has worked in kind of diffusing tension between landowners and folks looking to explore for oil?
Well, I can only talk about, out in the west, out in our area, especially Dunn County and up into McKenzie County and some of the situations, and it is working. And some of the issues that maybe people forget about, not everybody owns the minerals underneath the ground. And so there is a animosity to begin with. Maybe grandpa or dad sold the minerals to save the ranch or the farm back 40, 50 years ago, and now we've discovered oil. And the offspring are on the land and they don't have the mineral rights. And here you have someone else coming in and reaping the benefits. And like Commissioner Goring says, they have a right. They have a right to mine or get that mineral out of the ground. And so because of that and many other things, it's really been important. I would like to say that not every company is, got quality, integrity, and all that type of thing. If they all treated people fairly, we wouldn't need it.
That's right.
People are people. It doesn't matter what industry is. And so, therefore, it is an important thing. I would just like to say, from the legislative standpoint, we liked it because the program was already in place. Yeah. It didn't cost us any money. And as you know, Dale, we like things that don't cost us any money.
Has there been any suggestions for broadening or strengthening the program in some way, and how have those been dealt with? Not to my knowledge. It is going well. Nobody's complaining. If there was some complaints, let me tell you, we would know about it. Commissioner Goring, is there a way that you think that the legislature could help you do your job better on the mediation program?
Well, I would say they've done quite a bit. The program has a lot of flexibility and latitude. Just what they did last session, they expanded the scope of it to deal with energy-related issues and look at surface owners or landowners being a part of this process. They also expanded it to look at deer depredation. We had our first case this last year, and we resolved it. It was very amenable and worked out fine.
Well, you know, the deer are into my evergreens out at the farm north of Killdeer. Do you think I could get some mediation services?
Well, you sure can.
Who do you mediate with? I mean, do you bring the deer in, or what happens?
Game and Fish.
Game and Fish, yeah.
So you need to raise that issue with Game and Fish. Contact us, and we'll help you out. To that point, I will say that there have been bills out there that talk about certain work they'd like us to do. We've went down and at least notified the legislature in testimony that we can already do that stuff. But if they wish to put it in statute, that's fine too. We're still going to do it. We have asked for some more money. We put our budget together back in May of last year because we have to kind of follow a process, so 9 months before the legislature meets. And as we continue to see more and more activity, we had to come back in with a request. And with the extra activity that we are seeing now, we even had to come back and ask again. The program is relatively inexpensive to run. And when I say $100,000, $100,000 is a lot of money. But given the amount of workload that we accomplish and the amount of money that we save people in litigation and headaches, I believe it goes a long ways. The legislature has been very supportive anytime I've asked for something with respect to this, and I believe with the request that's out here now and it's over in the Senate, we'll see how that's going to get dealt with. But we're carrying out the work that the legislature has directed us to do.
Mr. Coons, we also wanted to speak about pipeline reclamation, and please tell us why is it important that pipelines be reclaimed, and what is the legislature doing to try to address the concern about the problems posed by abandoned pipelines?
I just had one comment on mediation yet, if
Please.
that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
We do have House Bill 1352 that we're hoping to strengthen the mediation by requiring, if one party requests it, it requires the other party to go there at least for the orientation process to get the people to sit down together, because that's the key to this. And then also it does adjust the cost some to make it more in line. It's still very affordable, but that's some of what's in 1352.
Okay. And about pipeline reclamation, why is that significant? Could you just explain the sort of difficulties that are posed by an abandoned pipeline?
Well, with the reclamation there's the reclamation relating to things that have happened from 1982 and forward, where there's no active company to go looking for monies to reclaim that. There is a bill out there now that is looking at $75 million to be funded with fees on top of that. Whatever fines are levied will go into this fund. That's to work on the older damages. Then there's also we were looking for a bill for reclamation in the future and currently. That got voted down. At this point, they're looking at putting that in administrative rule. So we're working with the oil and gas and hopefully in the future the soil classifiers to set some standards and be involved in that process. And
why is it that a pipeline that's buried in the ground that's not being used for anything, why is that bothersome? I mean, why do you need reclamation? Can't you just leave it there?
Well, there's from the soil disturbance, is it a one-stage dig or a two-stage? Is the topsoil replaced? Is the compaction there? Those type of things looked at. What type of placement with that? There is none of those standards for some of these gathering lines now. They could be plastic pipe, they could be cast iron, they could be 3 feet deep, they could be on sand, they could be on rock. So these are things that need to be looked at to make it whole again. And then in the end, if the pipeline is abandoned or not used, to be cleaned properly so you don't get seepage.
What sort of objections are you running into with this idea of having a pipeline reclamation fund?
The fund on the older pipelines, that's been moving forward fairly smoothly. I hope everything goes fine on the Senate side that way as well as it did on the House. With the newer reclamation. What we're looking to do is set for oil sites or pipelines or whatever type of development there is some type of a baseline. So if this land is at this level today in grassland production or agriculture, that when the oil play is finished, that it gets returned to that state again to make the surface owner whole.
How similar is this to what we have already with coal mine reclamation?
Well, that's where some of these inequities are. They have, a lot in place for coal, and there's a very basic template through the land department now for these sites, but it's very basic. There's a vast difference from land in the Medora area, the Badlands, to some heavy soils in the north, grasslands. So it needs to be more isolated to each site, just a baseline to work off to make them whole when it's done.
Senator Wardner, what sort of reception is the idea of having a pipeline reclamation fund, or the need for pipeline reclamation generally? What sort of reception is that getting in the legislature?
Oh, I think it's getting a positive reception. We realize that these things need to be taken care of, because as we move forward out in the oil country, we want to put in more pipelines to gather the gas and the oil. And if we don't take care of those things that are not being used, the landowner isn't going to want us going over their land again. I mean, they get a little bit tired of, they got to give easement after easement, and pretty soon they just have enough. And so we got to treat the landowner with a lot of respect.
I imagine if you have a lot of demand to lay pipelines, that there probably is some exploration of a solution where you have like certain designated corridors or something for a pipeline. That way you don't have to go digging up more ground, or you dig up the same ground maybe again. Is that sort of solution being explored?
Well, I think it's being explored, but I don't know if we've got any major passageways or areas that we do this at this time. But believe me, when it comes to electric transmission lines and pipelines and all that type of thing, they're surely looking at that, because they're all these utilities are having a tough time getting easements to put their lines through.
Mr. Coons, are landowners getting sick of people asking for permission to build pipelines on their property?
Well, if you would look at the landscape prior to this happening, it was kind of a peaceful place, and all of a sudden there's this bombardment of requests for easements and the extra traffic and all of the things that change in your neighborhood. The landowners are paying the biggest burden, I think, for that. They're getting the request for so many things, and one thing is okay and another thing's okay. So it's something that we need to look at and try to treat them with respect.
We've been speaking to Mr. Troy Coons. He's the vice chairman of the Northwest Landowners Association, which was formed recently to deal with disagreements between mineral developers and landowners in northwestern North Dakota. We also have with us Agriculture Commissioner Doug Goring, who is the administrator of a mediation program that deals with difficulties between landowners and oil companies. And we also have with us tonight Senator Rich Wardner, the Republican Majority Leader from Dickinson. Thank you all, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you, Dale.